How's everybody doing today? And welcome to Horror and Stuff. This is the first ever episode of the hopefully ongoing show. And today we're going to be covering a franchise, not to name any names, but yes, Nightmare on Elm Street. We're going to be covering that, and I'm going to be ranking these movies from what I believe are the worst to the best in this franchise. Now, before I get started, I do want everybody to know that I am having bad hair because I worked all day, came home, laid down, and started immediately watching some more movies for a different franchise that I will be covering later. And secondly, I want everybody to know that I like every single movie in this franchise. I love almost every single movie in this franchise. So, with that being said, let's get started. Alright, and coming in at number 9 is, wait for it, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. And I don't have a ton bad to say about this movie, except that there is just so much of it that is boring. It bored me to death. It's the only movie that I had trouble just continuing to pay attention to. I kept wanting to zone out, and it just couldn't hold my interest. It is not a bad movie, but I don't think it's something that is as good as the actual in the movie world movies, whereas this one is the only one that takes place in the quote-unquote real world, where Freddy's trying to break into the real world and is attacking the original cast and crew of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. With that being said, I did think that it was a very interesting idea. I just don't think that it was executed well. I will say this about Wes Craven. I like the things that Wes Craven has created. I think that he is conceptually a very creative person and makes worlds and atmosphere and things like that that are captivating and interesting in interesting in a conceptual sense. I do not think Wes Craven is good at the execution end of that a lot of the time. But that is my opinion. Moving on to the next movie. Oh, and like I said, I do like this movie. It's just, I don't love this movie. It is the only one that I don't love. Okay, and at number 8 is Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. So, when I hear people talk about this movie, they say how different this movie is than the rest of them because of how serious it takes itself and how it is, it leans into the homosexual undertones. I don't think that that's what makes this movie different. And in fact, I think that A New Nightmare at number 9 takes itself way more serious than this movie does. Now, that being said, I think that this movie could have been one of the greatest Nightmare on Elm Street, if not one of the greatest slasher films, if they would have done it a little bit differently. Sorry about the cat. I think, because what they did with this movie is, and it's one of the how this movie is different than the rest of them, is Freddy is using the body of another person to kill people. Um, and they leaned really hard into that. And there's not a lot of the dream world in this film. There's not as much, and all of the kills are very toned down compared to the first one, and then especially compared to all the going forward from there. This is all the kills are like basic slasher film kills in this movie. It's just people getting stabbed and slashed. And I think that this could have been one of the best films on this list, and probably one of the best slasher films of the 80s, if they would have leaned even harder into the non-supernatural part of this, and they would have made it a person that found out about Freddy, found maybe his claws in the house after the events of the first movie, and Freddy isn't actually back in this film. Get rid of all the supernatural elements to it, and just have it where this kid has gone crazy. He has the claws, and he sees Freddy, but the supernatural elements aren't actually happening. And turn it into just a full force, this is a crazy psycho slasher character. And I think you would have had because they already leaned hard into that. They just kept in some supernatural elements to be like, yeah, Freddy's actually here, kinda. But if they leaned completely into it, I think this movie would be so much further up this list, and probably way further up on any 80s slasher film list. Just my opinion. Alright, and at number 7 is Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. So, this movie is part of the Dream trilogy, which is fantastic. I think that the Dream trilogy is one of the most visually entertaining, like, 80s pieces of film. It is whoever designed the sets and the environments in these three movies, which is Nightmare on Elm Street 3, 4, and 5. If you didn't know, I think most of you that know the franchise will know what I'm talking about. But just the environments, the world, the way that everything looks, it's almost like walking into an even darker, more demented Tim Burton film. And I really, really love that aspect of these movies. This one was the weakest of the three, mainly because of the child part of it, and just the strangeness of that. I just don't think that it worked as well as they hoped that it would. And it was just kind of more of the same of the not the best parts of the first two films of 3 and 4. The having people that can use supernatural abilities in their dreams in order to fight Freddy is one of the coolest things about the Dream trilogy. And I think that they should have done a little bit more with that in this movie. And in fact, I think they should have done more with that in all of these movies. Had longer fight sequences and things of that nature. But I get it. I understand why they didn't. They're trying to keep these movies around an hour and a half, because that's what they want for horror movies. But that's all I really have to say bad about this film. It really wasn't that bad. I just think that it was... You had to end up comparing it to the first two Dream movies, to 3 and 4, And because of that, it makes this movie fall short. And that's why I have it so low. Moving on. Okay. This is where I'm going to lose some of you. This is where my derisive nature comes in to play. And this is where the hate is going to come rolling in. At number 6, we have the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Now I know what you're thinking. You're like, wait, there's at least 10,000 other Nightmare on Elm Streets that are worse than the original. But there's not. There's not. And I'll tell you why. The original Nightmare on Elm Street has some very, how do you say, concepts that do not get executed as well as I believe they should have. Now, the conceptualization of Freddy and what he is there to do is something that generations have spoken about and generations to come will continue to speak about. Wes Craven created one of the most iconic individuals in horror ever. Nobody can take that away. But like I said previously, I think that Wes Craven's execution into film from his conceptualization of things is not the best. It's my personal opinion. You can hate me if you want to. That's okay. Anyway, so in the first Nightmare on Elm Street, this is, in fact, one of only 2 films that I believe has true horror elements into it. And this has my absolute favorite scene out of any of these movies. Like I said, there's only the one movie that I don't love, but I still like it. And every one of these other movies I love. So this is me just hating on things that I love. This is not me just berating these movies. But my favorite scene in all of these movies is when she's in Nancy, right? Yeah. Nancy is in the school and falls asleep and sees her dead friend in a body bag standing outside the door. That whole sequence into her making her way down the hall and into the boiler room is by far my favorite sequence of events in any of these movies. That being said, this has very subpar acting. I am sorry, but sound matters. And whenever you have 1980s synth music blasting, and I think that I'm at a dance party when Freddy's sitting there trying to kill somebody, it kind of takes away from the moment. And, you know, I understand that it makes it feel goofy and fun, but I want those moments to feel like horror moments. I want the sound effects of claws scraping to sound like claws actually scraping and not some weird sound. I want glass breaking to sound like actual glass shattering and not somebody dropping a plate on the floor, which unfortunately is just the sound quality and the sound effects that they had in the 80s. I get it. But it does take away from a modern watcher watching these films and not experiencing it when it first released. That is reality. But like I said, I love this film. It has my favorite scene ever in any of these movies in it. And I will continue to love this film, but it is at my number 6. Moving on. If you thought that one was bad, if you thought you were really going to hate me with that one, number 5, Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Dream Warriors. Okay. Now, I hear you. You're like, wait. What did he say? Number 3? And number 5? What? No. Yes. And I will go over why. Okay. I don't think I'm going to have a good enough reason for you. I really don't. Okay. The world in 3, 4, and 5, the environments, the props, the atmosphere in these movies is so fantastic. It's like walking through a dream world, but it still suffers from the low quality audio that existed during this time period that doesn't give you the same oomph that modern horror does. And I know that it is not fair to compare modern horror to 80s horror. It's just not. Modern horror has become so fantastic in the way that it can make you feel just by simple noises. And there's no way that movies from this time period can really do that. We have iconic sounds and little like jingles like doo 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 doo. Yeah, I get it. Like those are iconic, but they cannot just like hit a note and make you just feel like your very life is about to end sitting in your living room. It doesn't happen. It is not terrifying. But the Dream trilogy isn't terrifying. It's comedy horror. It's not true horror. It's not pure horror. And that makes these movies absolutely fantastic. They are a marvel to witness and look at and just see the different things in the world and that they created. But all of these older movies also suffer from subpar acting. And in my opinion, uninteresting main characters, but like I said, I love these movies. I love them. You don't have to have interesting heroes in horror. You have to have interesting villains. And Freddy is only interesting because of what he can do. Let's be honest, people. Freddy is not interesting for anything that he actually says. He is interesting for what he does. Let's be honest. Moving on. Okay. Moving on to number 4. This is the 2010 remake of the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Now I know, Robert Englund is Freddy. But I am pretty sure that Jackie Earle Haley is the better actor overall. I hate to say, I don't think by like a long shot. I just think that he as Freddy is actually terrifying. He embodied the horror. And if you're a Watchmen fan like I am, and you watch that movie with him as Rorschach, He is the antithesis of that character, playing Freddy. And it is a wonder to witness him become such a demonic presence after playing such a like anti-evil character, a character that destroys evil into the purest form of evil. And I think that that's fantastic just to have on your resume. It's pretty cool. But the reason why I love this movie is you finally get to hear the scraping sounds that you imagined when you were a kid. Actual claws scraping against metal. And you get to hear a Freddy that is terrifying. I can't really do his voice that great, but he's really actually scary. And this movie gets a lot of flack, but I think having actual story elements into these movies is fantastic. And getting to see the backstory and actually the parents attacking him and trapping him, and the kids finding out and them going like, why would you do this to another human being? You're crazy. We were kids. We lied, and we might have lied. But then they find out, oh no, we were telling the truth. That dude deserved to die. And it's just fantastic. Now, my absolute favorite scene in any movie is in the original, in the school with the friend in the body bag. They redid that scene in this movie, but not as good. They should have done, if they would have done a frame by frame remake of how that scene happened and made it with the technology that they have, and they did a frame by frame remake of it, I think that could have been absolutely fantastic and actually brought a high definition feel to my favorite scene. But they effed it up. That's okay. I give them a little bit of leeway on that. My other gripe with this movie is that there are only 5 kids that he's after, and 3 of them die within like 30 to 40 minutes of the movie. And the other 2, which I will say it is cool how they did it, but I would have liked all of them a little bit spread out, with him messing with everybody a little bit. But after he kills those first 3, he just starts messing with the other 2, like I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you, and it's a build up on it, and I liked it. I just would have preferred the kills to be spaced out, and I probably would have preferred at least one more kill, just for the sake of Freddy getting more kills in the film, and more interesting kills. Now, don't hate me. Just don't hate me. It's okay. It's really okay. Moving on. And now everybody's wondering, what movies am I missing? There's 3 more to go, and I don't remember because they shouldn't be this high up on the list, but they are. Anyway, coming in at number 3 from downtown, it's Nightmare on Elm Street number 4, The Dream Master. And man, do I love this film. It is one of the most entertaining films on this list. I love this film. The protagonist gaining the abilities of each of her dead friends as they die is really interesting and cool to me. In my opinion, this has the best set designs out of all of the films. This movie is so good. And I will say, I will give this movie props on this. This is that you can see a distinct jump in visual technology when it comes to the film quality from 3 to 4. It's not massive. Oh my god, phone. It's not massive, but there is a distinct film quality jump between Dream Warriors and the Dream Master. Now, the audio quality has not, at this time period yet, has not made that next jump. That doesn't really happen until the 90s, but this movie was fantastic. It has some of my favorite set designs, and I will forever love this movie. The top 3 movies are 3 movies that I could watch any day, anytime, any day, and I am comfortable with that take. I hope that you can become comfortable with it as well. Moving on. Now, there's only 2 movies left. Only 2. And for my sake, I hope that I say the right one in the right order for you guys. I think that there's one on here that might be acceptable to some of you. But at number 2 is Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. This is when you see a distinct jump in audio quality along with the visual quality jump that has happened in the previous films. And you get to see a slightly higher class of actor come out in this. Okay. And what I mean by that is the 90s is when people stopped doing as much stage acting in movies as they used to do. They still do it a little bit in the 90s, but the stage acting is starting to go away now. And what I mean by that is overdramatic, melodramatic, over-the-top acting that, in my opinion, does not work as well on film as it does on stage. I love going to a play or a musical and seeing people perform on stage. It is a completely different experience. When I watch a film, I want to escape into the possibility of reality. I want it to be fantasy, but I want it to feel like there's a possibility of reality to what I'm watching. And you don't get that, in my opinion, with stage acting. And then, on top of that, you have a distinct increase in audio quality, where it doesn't sound like somebody in a sound booth talking when they're talking on film. Now, some people, when I say that, some people look at me crazy. I'm like, I promise you, if you go listen to, somebody's dub of something and how the compressors and the different mixes that they put on those voices sound, as opposed to like me talking directly into this mic and not putting any filters on it. It is a completely different experience. It's like it, but that has to do with the technology that they had. I understand that. That's fine. But of course, you also get even more backstory in this. You get Freddy's kid, who through her we get to understand him a little bit better. We get to see one of the most interesting things in all of these films, a town that is devoid of children that have all been massacred. And the one kid that was able to find his way out and get out, and then him bring other kids back, and you get to see how these adults are just crazy with no seemingly no real interaction with the outside world. They've gone crazy. And that is one of the most interesting things in these movies. It's just really cool the way that they did it. And you get to see the way that Freddy takes out these kids and their abilities that one or two of them have. Are far more interesting than the old ones, where they can just do like acrobatics and be really strong. Like, this is the characters are far more interesting, the protagonists are, and you already have an antagonist that does interesting things. So you have an interesting antagonist and you have interesting protagonists in this. The only gripe I have with this movie is they decided to try to make it a 3D movie, and the last like quarter of the movie has like really bad like graphics for the 3D effect, and that is the worst part of the film. But in my opinion, this is a movie that, as far as the standalone Nightmare on Elm Street films, this is the best film, period. As far as overall quality, I know a lot of you are going to hate me and disagree with that. That's fine. Like I said, I love these movies, but there is one that stands above them all, and I think it's unfair to even have it on this list. But anyway, let's do it. And the winner is the champion of the world, Freddy versus Jason. Literally, all I have to say is the title of this movie, and it wins. Right? Right. No. Anyway, this has some just excellent, like, movie monster mayhem and great kills, and Jason not tied down to his location. He's going and he's in Freddy's turf. He's taking out Freddy's kills. Freddy gets mad about it. He's wanting to fight. And this is the first movie out of all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies that you have the better quality acting, better quality film, and better quality audio all together, like with the 2010 one. But you also have Robert Englund as Freddy doing his thing, and I love this movie. I will watch this movie any day, anytime, with anyone, anywhere. I love this film. It may not have the same story elements and interesting pieces of information and set pieces that look like they were created by the most loving, caring individuals in the world, as far as people caring about and being passionate about what they're building. Um, this doesn't have that. What this has is the most high high octane nostalgia injection into the veins that any old school horror fan uh, would absolutely love. And if you love the Nightmare on Elm Street films, if you love the Friday the 13th films, this is a film that I know that you gotta love. It's just a nostalgia dump straight into the brain, and you don't have to think. You sit down and watch, love and enjoy, and feel content when you're done. But that's all 9 films. Hopefully you stayed around for the whole thing. Hopefully I wasn't too long-winded with all of my explanations. And hopefully you don't hate me. But if you do, that's alright too. If you love me, if you hate me, leave a comment below. I will try to respond to everybody that I can. Please stick around and find out how I feel about maybe your favorite franchise. But next time, we're going to have a little bit of sci-fi horror coming at you with the next franchise. Anyway, y'all have a good night, and I'll see y'all later.